It's day 92 in the desert, and I think the date is January 24th, 2012, but I'm not really sure anymore. I'm still the only woman I've seen amongst 30 Somali men. I have a raging urinary tract infection that I'm pretty sure is turning into a kidney infection. I've been asking, begging for medicine. No one will bring me anything. And I get up for the 10th time that morning to drag myself to a nearby bush, walk what I call the walk of shame, as these Somali men laugh at me. They jeer at me. From what I understand, the ransom demand for my freedom started out at $45 million. It's now dropped to $18 million. And there are some rumblings that it might go down to $4 million. But $4 million is still too much for someone like me to come up with. I'm a teacher by training, a humanitarian aid worker by profession. They get in my face all the time and they scream, "Where is big money? Where is big money?" I don't have any big money. I go to sleep that night, very little hope that I'm going to survive this ordeal. And as I'm falling asleep, I'm thinking, how did I get here? How does this happen to a girl like me? 92 days prior, I was on a routine field mission with my international non-governmental organization in the south of Somalia. My colleague and I were in our caravan of 3 cars headed back to the guest house when we were overtaken. We had security in front, security behind, and we were in the middle. We're driving through town, and all of a sudden we get cut off. And at first I think it's just some rude driver, doesn't know what they're doing, until I hear the butt of an AK-47 slam into my window. The door flies open, and there's this man screaming at me. He pulls the other Somalis out of the vehicle, and he climbs in with some other guys, and he starts yelling in Somali that he needs my money and he wants my phone. We take off driving into the desert down these camel tracks. We're bumping along. I'm holding on for dear life, afraid that I'm going to be thrown from the vehicle. And all I can think are 2 thoughts. The first one is fairly obvious, that this is really bad. This is so very bad. And the second thought I have, that no matter how this thing turns out, no matter what's going to happen, my life has changed forever. It's never going to be the same from here on out. So we continue to drive like this. We stop, we switch cars, they switch personnel. Everybody's heavily armed. We're talking AK-47s, machine guns. We drive for hours, and it becomes dark, and they stop in the middle of the desert, and they command us to get out of the vehicle. I get out, and I stand next to the car, and then they say, "Walk." And they point out into nothing. I say no. "Walk," he says again. And I say no. Finally, my colleague comes over and he takes my hand gently and he says, "Jessica, we have to walk." And I say, "I'm not walking out there. I don't know what they're going to do to me." And so we begin to walk out into this blackness, out into what we don't know. And they stop us after 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and they command us to get down on our knees. And I'm here in the middle of the desert, on my knees, waiting for a bullet, basically, to hit me in the head. And I think that this is it. This is my final departure from this life. And then one of them says the most beautiful word I've ever heard in my life: sleep. They want us to sleep.
And at the same time as Jessica is being abducted, I am about 4 hours north. I'm doing also training for parliamentarians there. And suddenly I get a phone call from a number that I don't recognize, and it turns out to be from Jess' organization. And they let me know that Jess and her colleague have been kidnapped. We don't know by whom, we don't know where they are, we don't know for what reason. Of course, you go into a kind of a panic mode. You don't understand why this happens to you. You don't understand who could do this kind of thing. And my initial reaction is that I have to go in after her. I have to do something. Your whole head is just messed up with all this guilt. But suddenly I get a second phone call, and it turns out to be from FBI. And they tell me that, well, you need to focus on what would be best for Jess at this time. Is it for you to go in after her, potentially getting killed, potentially put Jess in even more harm's way? And I have to take that kind of departure from a normal kind of me that would be to be in control of a situation, to give that control over to other people. And I just have to trust their judgment. So from that moment on, I ask myself a question that would be the question that I would ask myself every day, every second, the coming 93 days. And that is, what would Jess want me to do?
So during the abduction, the actual kidnapping part, while I'm sitting there in this vehicle, there's so much going on, as you can imagine, and so much shouting and screaming, and they were chewing chat, which is this leaf that Somalis often chew, and it hypes them up, it makes them very aggressive. And I could hear this very high-pitched voice behind me, and I kept thinking, my God, there's a woman involved in this kidnapping. I just thought that was so strange, and I kept hearing the voice, and curiosity got the best of me, and so I turned around to look behind me to see, what's this woman doing in this vehicle? And I came face to face with a small child. And he was covered in ammunition. He had an AK-47, and he then pointed at my head and motioned for me to turn around. And the irony of the fact that the reason I went to Africa in the first place was to work with recovered child soldiers, and here I am being kidnapped one by one, was not lost on me. As the days progressed, I found out that this child's name was Abdullahi, and he was 11 years old. He had claimed to already have killed 3 people. He was trying to be a big man when he was really just a small child. He was out on a mission to make money for his family. The scariest thing about Abdullahi is that he was so young and he was so traumatized, he didn't understand cause and effect, as in, if he shot me in the head, they weren't going to get their big money. I would say to Abdullahi, you need to be in school, learning something, not here. And he would say, no money, no money. He terrified me. And he was really just a product of his environment. And much like Abdullahi was a product of his environment, I was a product of mine. And I learned as the hours passed and the days passed that surviving demands a departure from normal thinking, that you have to think outside the box in order to survive. And although I was afraid for my life, my physical life, I was really afraid of losing my mind. You're sitting there day after day after day, not knowing when this is going to end, how it's going to end. You have very little interaction with anybody about anything. And so I realized that if I was going to make it through this with my mind intact, then I was going to have to come up with some kind of strategy. I was going to have to come up with some sort of routine. And so I laid out this work plan for myself that, okay, I do have 32 years of memories and experiences, and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to dissect them all apart. So that's what I did. Day 26, I'm going to think about every memory I can come up with from the age of 4 to 6. I'm going to think about the first time I went to a movie theater and I saw Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs with my mom, and she was wearing a blue dress with white flowers, and we had popcorn, and I just tried to think of absolutely every detail of every part of my life. I tried to remember song lyrics and dissect those and think about what did the artist mean when they said this. I tried to do math problems in the sand with sticks and try to remember how to do long division and algebra. But by day 92, I'd run out of memories, I'd run out of song lyrics, I'd run out of math problems. And I was really starting to lose hope that I was going to make it out of this thing alive. I had become very ill and was not getting any help, and my hope was very, very small.
And a few days prior to this, Jess had the opportunity to give a proof of life call, where she had told us that her health was really declining. And at that point, we had to make some sort of a decision as a family, and we said that, well, we cannot make the real decisions here, but if we can influence them, this is the time. So I went over to Jess' doctor and asked him, do you think Jess is going to make it? And he told me that, no, these symptoms, if she gets a kidney infection, she's done. She's not going to come back alive. So I took this information and went to a meeting where I knew that FBI would be present, and told them that normally I would kind of say that, well, it's okay during the circumstances, but it's tough. But this time around, I decided that, well, we've come to that point where that's not enough. And I told them that I don't think she's going to make it. I think Jess is going to die out there. So these two FBI agents, they look at each other and leave the meeting. And from that moment on, I knew that if anything will happen, it's going to happen relatively soon.
And I'm out in the desert, not knowing that the FBI is involved, not knowing that the U.S. government would ever do anything to help a humanitarian aid worker like me. And so it's literally night 92. I'm got this raging infection. I go to sleep, and I wake up in the middle of the night I needed to go out and find a bush to be sick. And I wake up and I ask for permission to go to the toilet, and that was standard procedure with the pirates. And tonight was different because everybody was completely passed out. Usually at least one of them was awake. And so I ask over and over again, but no one would wake up. So I go to a bush, and I take my small pen light, my small flashlight, and I flash it on and off, on and off, on and off, because I'm so afraid that they're going to think that I had tried to escape, and what would they do to me if I had tried to escape. And I come back, and I can hear this rustling, this sound, and I think that it's these beetles coming out. They would come out in the middle of the night, and they were so big, and they would get in my hair and in my clothes and my blanket, and I just couldn't deal with it. And so I'm shaking everything, trying to find these beetles, and they're not there. I do this over and over again, and I can't find them. And so I lay back down to try to go to sleep, and within a minute, I hear one of the guys who's next to me jump up and start whisper shouting to the other pirates who are asleep in Somali, and he's very frantic, and I pull my blanket away from my face, and I can see that he's just absolutely terrified. And then the entire night just erupts into automatic gunfire. And I'm laying there as low as I can get to the ground, thinking, I'm really not going to make it out of this alive. Like, this is it. This is the end. Because this is probably another group coming to kidnap us. And I don't have the strength to survive another kidnapping. It could be Al-Shabaab, an Islamic extremist group, and if it's them, then I'm done. It's over. I'm an American woman. I can hear terrible things happening all around me. People dying, people breathing their last breaths. And then suddenly I feel hands all over me, touching me, grabbing at me, and I start to kick and I start to fight. And I hear somebody say my name. This man with an American accent, and he says, Jessica, Jessica. It's okay. It's okay. We're the American military. We're here to take you home. You're finally safe. And so he picks me up and he throws me over his shoulder and he runs with me to safety, and they form a ring around us and a human shield actually over us. And we're waiting for the helicopters to come in, and I think that this is finally over, but not yet. I have to get up into the air. I have to get off this ground in order to believe that it's really over. So the helicopters come in, and I run as fast as I can, even in my sick state. And I throw myself onto the helicopter, and I climb across the floor, and I remember just pressing myself up against the wall and thinking, I survived. It's done. I'm finally going home. I'm finally going home. And I'm here today to say thank you to the U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6, who have been so brave and so wonderful to come in and get us, and to the FBI and to the U.S. government for never leaving anybody behind. And just very proud to be an American. Thank you.
Thank you.